Spanish playmaker Sergio de Larrea was the number 25 pick in the 2026 NBA draft. He ended up on the Dallas Mavericks, and I've really liked what I've seen in Summer League so far. So let's break down some of his tape. 3 games into the Las Vegas Summer League, De Larrea's standout skill has been his passing. This isn't a surprise to anyone who's followed the Spanish prospect over the course of his career, as his combination of positional size and playmaking has always been the elevator pitch. In particular, Dallas's game against the Grizzlies showed off De Larrea's pick-and-roll repertoire as he went for 12 assists in 30 minutes. The idea of pairing De Larrea with Dallas's above-the-rim threats, such as Derek Lively II, Daniel Gafford, PJ Washington, potentially Moussa Cisse, is easy to imagine. Diving into some of the tape, De Larrea made great use of this middle screen in his last game, constantly connecting with his big for lobs. This one here shows the pizzazz and accuracy that De Larrea plays with as the Spanish playmaker uses the screen and launches the alley-oop on the move with perfect precision through a really tight window. But De Larrea is not a one-dimensional passer. The defense expects the lob here, so they overhelp really early. Larry looks off to the big, but he's actually going to find the corner shooter and assist an open 3. Here, De Larrea uses a stack pick and roll, or in his case, it would really be a Spain pick and roll, and he again uses his eyes to shift the defense before placing the pass over Cam Boozer for the assist. Thinking about down the line, I'm also intrigued by the idea of lessening Cooper's flag offensive load, which I think will need to happen eventually, and letting him pick up easier points as an off-ball weapon. For now though, Larry probably won't be given super high on-ball usage to start off his NBA career, but he can still make connective, quick reads in transition, or he can also attack closeouts based on what we'll see now with his three-pointer. Through his first 3 games, 60% of De Larrea's shots have been threes. Now, it's not anywhere as extreme, but his Summer League scoring profile reminds me a bit of Yegor Diomin during last year's edition. However, Diomin was getting far fewer playmaking reps, which naturally pushed him into more of an off-ball role that continued throughout his rookie season and will now likely change. One thing to note is how De Larrea has been cold from the right side of the floor, but we're dealing with a very small sample size. For now, I'm reading to the 3-point volume over his percentages. Still, making these shots will be important even in the short term if De Larrea wants to carve out an early rotation role. So far, 75% of his made shots have been assisted throughout Summer League. Looking at his shooting form, I find De Larrea's catch-and-shoot 3 to be compact and clean, though the release could get a little quicker. I'm also curious to see whether the couple of flashes we've seen from De Larrea's screening and then popping out for 3 continue. Dallas could use them in guard-to-guard or playmaker-to-playmaker screening actions. Also of interest here, De Larrea has shot about 88% from the free throw line, but on really low volume. Scoring-wise, the highlight of De Larrea's Summer League was this step-back 3 on Cameron Boozer, which had people making Luka Doncic comparisons. But that moment aside, it's self-creation and scoring aggression that De Larrea has to work on the most. Like at previous levels, the Mavs prospect has been very much a pass-first player throughout his first Summer League games. To his credit, De Larrea has already played some tough defenders like Will Richard in this clip, or as we'll also see, Cedric Coward. But overall, the former Valencia player isn't going to blow by or separate from defenders, in particular because his handle can be disrupted when opponents pressure him. As a result, De Larrea can't always rise into his jumper cleanly if he even gets that chance. Right now, the Mavs prospect typically needs to use a screen or lull his defender to sleep before getting into his pull-up. From there, De Larrea's lower body balance can fluctuate as well, with his legs sometimes fluttering. For now, his high three-point attempt rate is linked to his inability to create space, particularly inside the arc. De Larrea's ball handling is by far his biggest area of improvement, and that's also tied to his lack of strength. Right now, his handle is still a little high, loose, and stiff for NBA standards. De Larrea can also take too long and require too many dribbles to create advantages in the pick and roll still. Like I said, unless he has a screen, he finds it difficult to create space and constantly get downhill. We can see some examples of that now. Here, it's Cedric Coward, who I mentioned earlier, hounding De Larrea and eventually forcing him to give up the ball. Or here, Javon Small bothers De Larrea's handle and forces the turnover, which then leads to this beautiful outlet pass from Cam Boozer. Then, some of De Larrea's turnovers have also come because he's tried to get too creative through tight passing windows. Maybe these are tighter than he's accustomed to, as he may still be getting adjusted to the length, size, and athleticism of NBA defenders. For now, I'm not particularly worried about these turnovers. De Larrea is a creative passer, so some mistakes will naturally come with that, especially early on. My biggest concern, by far, is whether De Larrea can tighten his handle, up his strength, and subsequently begin creating enough space to constantly tap into that passing ability that he's shown without always needing a screen. This has also shown up in De Larrea's finishing, which has been far from assertive. So far, he shot 3 for 7 inside the paint, and it's largely been the same issues with his handle that apply. Beyond his percentages, which I don't consider that important right now, I'm again looking at his process. Here, I feel like De Larrea has a lane to the rim in the open court, but he turns it down either because he's too pass first or because he lacks the confidence to attack the basket right now. Finally, we saw De Larrea used as a cutter a fair bit in Dallas's first game on June 9 versus Golden State. A couple of these moments were inbound plays, but I'm more focused on the broad strokes rather than specifics in Summer League. De Larrea has good feel, and he can move without the ball if he has to, at least in terms of providing spacing. This will never be his main appeal, but he has to find ways to score and add value next to Cooper Flagg and Kyrie Irving. This cutting can also be a way to offset his shaky handle, though I would expect that to primarily be centered around his spot-up threes, and then maybe some transition opportunities like we see in this last clip here. As a draft prospect, my concern was that De Larrea was too much of a tweener on defense in the sense that he was too weak for wings, but not fast or bendy enough for guards. For the most part, this still holds true, but I've been fairly impressed by De Larrea's on-ball tenacity in Summer League. He's had some decently disruptive moments on ball handlers, picking up full court and forcing some mistakes. Here, we see De Larrea pick up Pete Suter, who signed a two-way deal with the Lakers, and he makes him pass off the ball. Then, in this play, De Larrea shows good engagement, sticking in the play long enough to pick up the deflection and force the turnover. Eventually, he gets the ball back, and then he runs the pick and roll to guide Morez Johnson to a dunk. Off the ball, De Larrea has competed, but I haven't found him to be particularly effective. His athletic margins are still lacking, and he can't cover that much ground. The new Mavs rookie will always be insulated to some extent by his positional size, but he's not twitchy, bouncy, or very long. De Larrea's strength improvements, again, will also be key on this end of the floor, especially to defend wings, but also to navigate screens. Just real quick to cap off this video, I did want to take a little bit of a statistical look at De Larrea's Summer League so far. Now, obviously the caveat here is that he's only played 3 games. He's coming off a really long season already in Spain for Valencia. But I do think this is interesting though. Thank you to the F5 on Substack, like I say at the bottom of this graphic, for their Summer League stats that you can trust article. And basically this divides the stat categories into 3. So the sticky stats being the stats that are most predictive of a player's rookie season in the NBA. Then there are the other stats, which, you know, they still matter, but probably are not as predictive. And then there's the icky stats, which in theory are not predictive at all. Here you can see, for example, that De Larrea's really high 3-point attempt rate at 60% of his shots being threes. Well, that's likely to translate over into the NBA. So are his 3-point attempts per 36 minutes, which, you know, is probably indicative of that as well, and, you know, naturally linked to that high 3-point attempt rate. But more than that, I think it's really interesting to look at his assists per 36. That, to me, suggests that De Larrea will already be a valuable facilitator of some sort as a rookie. Now, I think that will also, you know, depend on his leverage as a scorer at the end of the day. But so far, the signs on tape, the signs on the stats look good. And I'm very intrigued to keep watching De Larrea for the rest of this Summer League and then throughout his rookie season as well. As always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Make sure to leave a comment telling me what you make of Sergio de Larrea. Make sure to subscribe to the Floor and Ceiling Substack. And if you want to watch more content like this, subscribe to the channel as well. Take care, and I'll catch you guys next time.